Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. Jaime En Fuego here, welcoming you to my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. Call me Fuego for short, and gracias for taking the time to tune in to my thoughts all about the new Ryan Murphy series that recently hit Netflix just about a week ago. We're talking about Hollywood! You never should have gone to Hollywood! Yeah, and it's interesting. We have 7 episodes here, and I originally had a different review planned for today. It's a really terrible film called The Jesus Rolls, which is a spin-off that John Turturro did for The Big Lebowski. But as I watched the first couple episodes of this last night, a friend's, beckoning and recommendation and stuff, a fellow film critic, Chauncey K. Robinson, who's out in LA, I was like, yeah, I have to finish this and I have to make this, especially since it's like in the top 10 in the United States, at least for Netflix. I have to give my thoughts about this, and I was initially very compelled by this story. It draws you in because it's 1947, post-World War II, and it's all about a few bit players that are trying to just get their toe in the door, man. I mean, doing their damnedest, not even their foot, their toe in the goddamn door, for God's sake. And we are initially introduced to this character, played, named Jack, I should say. And he's back from, the big one, WW2, and he's with his pregnant wife, who you find out a little bit later, has twins that are on the way, and he's trying to just, become an actor, and trying so very hard in such a, small fish in a big pool sort of situation to, get into the moving pictures and all that. And he's going and hanging out in front of the studio lot, the Ace studio lot, which is this imaginary studio that is like the main crux of everything that's transpiring here. Can't catch a break. And so we initially start to just find out what happens with these people who are trying to make it and they're having trouble, and it goes to the dark underbelly of everything. And he gets himself involved with some seedy stuff. He really does. But the promise initially that we have of this being a very dark examination of what people do to try to get famous, especially just poignant in this, post-Me Too, Time's Up movement that we have right now, it ends up being more so a rumination about prejudice, which is a majorly important thing that needs to be discussed. I was raised Reformed Baptist, a subsect of Christianity. I am now an agnostic, and I must contend right off the bat that while there wasn't racial hatred, thank God, from my parents, there was definitely hatred for anything LGBTQ, anything, gay or remotely of that variety, bisexual, homosexual, whatever silly, term people have used over the years, to just be prejudice. And we get some of those words in here, we get some of those racist words in here, and so it's about just trying to break in and become stars if you're gay, if you are a person of color, or in this case, you also have, being post-World War II, you have the Asian American aspect that's called into play as well. Very important stuff to discuss, but it really just beats you over the head with it at first, and then lowers the stakes significantly. And so despite the fact that this show has terrific costuming, it's very well directed, the acting is actually very good, and we have some intriguing and likable characters, in every spectrum, except for one in particular. But even our bad characters in this, the ones that have, prejudice, or they're taking advantage of people or whatever, and I'm trying not to spoil stuff. I was initially thinking this would be a spoiler review, but I want people to watch it and kind of make up their own mind in this regard. So unlike that New York Post article by Andrea, whatever her name is, where she basically spoiled the entire show without giving any forewarning, talked major shit about this show, and in my opinion, really came from a very cynical, negative place. I'm not going to come from that cynical, negative place. I'm just going to say that there were too many conveniences in this, that everything was just wrapped up in a nice little package. It's interesting in the fact that it's railing against the fact that there is so much of a negative back force to, the outside looking in, trying to, just get representation and make their way, which is immensely important. I cannot stress that enough. As a straight white man, God, this is even like dangerous ground for me to even give discourse about. But I'm glad that I broke away from these narrow-minded mentalities that I had, it just basically programmed into me from my upbringing, and it was really from breaking away from parents who I'm glad I still have a good relationship with and everything, but making friends of various orientations and stuff like that. And I'm obviously not perfect and not as unique in some of those situations, but the thing about this show that I found the most off-putting at times, I guess, was just all of those conveniences. The fact that even the shitty people in this have a redemptive arc. It was like everything works out perfectly for everybody. That whole Hollywood dream that initially the show gives this promise of showing the dark underbelly of, it flips the script after a few episodes and it turns into just everything is working out our way, and including when some of these like shitty things about so just to give some discourse here. So there is this is actually a very it's funny how it's a very graphic show in its depiction of sex, and yet it's also a very safe show in the aspect of storytelling and consequence beyond that. Dare I say it's a very vanilla show, and this is coming from a white dude who's saying that. It's just very safe, and this is not to slog on Ryan Murphy, who has done previously American Horror Story that I love, GLEE that was fun, Scream Queens. He is prolific. He is a great show developer and creator, and I love the eccentricities and the extent of his passions and everything. The fact that he can span this immense gamut, and but I don't really feel like this show was as hard-hitting as it needed to be in both the struggles and in both just, certain consequences and the antagonism as well. The antagonism in this is very brief when it happens, there is a film that is initially written by a gay black man, and he's writing about a white woman, and this is like it's interesting how some of this like draws from actual history, and then there's other aspects of it that are revisionist history, so that's something to keep in mind. But so yes, a gay black screenwriter from Memphis who is that character is awesome. His kind of his arc with Rock is really sweet, and I can be very comfortable in myself and say that his love story with Rock Hudson is very cute, and I liked it a lot. I honestly bought into that love story more so than the director and the aspiring actress who ends up kind of just nudging her way into the film, who was the girlfriend of the said director, who was half Filipino. I felt that, was not as genuine and stuff, and then, we see things with the couple white couples that all conveniently just pair off and stuff like that. There's just, everything is wrapped up in a nice little package, as I mentioned, and it's just everybody who is having these little problems, whether it's cheating on spouses or, significant others or whatever, there is so much of a free love sort of thing going on, and yet this is 1947, so much of this is most definitely revisionist history to keep in mind, everybody. But it's like, even characters that start out being a little bit shitty, all of them end up just kind of turning around, and they're like, isn't it great that we're all better people? And that's really the off-putting extent of this, despite the terrific music, as I mentioned earlier, awesome costuming, high production values, and really good acting and chemistry, from the entire cast. And Tamara, as much as I love her, she's not very good in this, but even Rob Reiner, when he shows up briefly, Queen Latifah is great as the woman who won the first African-American, Best Actress Award for Gone with the Wind 8 years previously in 1939. So there is historical context, there is important stuff, there is a just ginormous aspect of tribulation that is documented here that is broken down. But when there is a old privileged, rich, white woman producer who turns to a young gay black man from Memphis, in the South in 1947, and says, "We're the same, you and me," essentially. There's some pretentiousness there, and she even slightly admits it afterwards, but yet it's not, I don't know, man, it's kind of contrived, and there is just an essence of, boy, I really hate to say it, but there is a lack of authenticity about the real difficulties that all of my gay friends over the years have told me about, that friends of mine who grew up in the South even as recently as the last decade, in the 2010s, man, they're like, yeah, I was in Bama, I was in some of these areas of the country where there is still a prejudice that has been passed on from generation to generation. This really, it's very much the squeaky clean kind of image of Hollywood where everything works out, and it just, I don't know, man. I really, as much as I liked the concept initially and the first few episodes, the fact that everybody has these redemptive arcs, the fact that, I applaud, most definitely, I applaud the message that they're going with, but really the biggest issue, and this is something that a lot of my my lady friends, my friends that are women, have told me that they felt the same way about Black Christmas, the most recent film, the third version of that from last year, where it's one thing to have a really important message, it's another thing to beat you over the head with it, and that's unfortunately what Hollywood on Netflix does. It beats you over the head with its message, and it doesn't really, it's a fairy tale. It's a Hollywood fairy tale at the end of the day, where everything works out and everything is great for everybody. At the end of the day, everybody finds love, and it's just, I don't know, as it wore on, it didn't really deliver on that sort of darker premise that I was hoping, especially after that pilot, that first episode that I believe Murphy directed as well. It didn't follow through with that, and it felt more of that old school Hollywood, washed up Hollywood. It just really segued back into that, and that's really the main thing that I have to say, unfortunately. So there are a lot of pros to it, and the first few episodes were quite interesting. There is a terrific cast, a lot of faces I've never seen before, and all of those young actors are good. The writer, the director, Jack, our actor, our dude who plays Rock Hudson. Have to say, MVP is most definitely Parsons from Big Bang Theory, whatever that stupid show is. I've never liked that show. It's always been very off-putting to me. Never liked his performance on that. He embraces it here, man. He is all about it. But yeah, Parsons steals the show as this guy who is pulling the strings, taking advantage of these young men, some not even, gay, and, just, hey, he's like, if you want to get into the business, he is very much the Harvey Weinstein in that regard, and yet I have to at least say spoilers about his character. When his character, spoilers, when his character is redeemed, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, it was almost as bad as when Rob Reiner's character, who was racist as fuck the entire time for those few episodes that we have him, and then suddenly he's all okay with it, and everybody's just championing this picture, and it all just, everything works out, everything is great. I don't know. I really hope there is not a second season of this, despite the fact that I enjoyed the setup, I enjoyed the premise, and that's about where I'm going to leave it, as opposed to after finishing the last episode just now. The KKK shows up, and they're just there for like 1 second. The protests are there for like a couple scenes. It's just ridiculous, man. So, in any event, everybody, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Just like you see below, it's normally nerdtastic coverage on here, but sometimes I veer into the more dramatic and occasional television series. If you like spectacular stuff, jump over to The Horror Show, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. But yeah, until the Reel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant readers and viewers alike. But I'm hopeful that we get to share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. Peace, stay healthy, and watch more TV.